So today is Chris with us once again. Chris, thank you very much for joining us once more in this series of discussions. And we're going to deep dive in the power of internal data and how this can shape smarter, more profitable pricing strategies. Like internal data, like sales history, cost structures, and what we're going to explore actually is how powerful these data are. It's the start point eventually to start from your own data to understand what's happening and how to make some decisions. And we're going to look into several parts of this, such as what are the data that I have to collect? How about the historical data that we have? What is the role of cost analysis and financial analysis of those data, and how all this can support us and to making more accurate decisions.
Thanks for having me, Alex, again. And I think that, frequently we sit on the gold mine of data for pricing. We believe that, we need to do so many analyses, but the truth is that, a very good point, the very good starting point is, analyzing the internal data and taking decisions based on them. So, can't wait to dive in.
So the first question that everybody should have is what type of internal data are we talking about, and which of them are the most valuable in the perspective of and the goal of taking correct pricing decisions?
So I think that we can have a three buckets of data when it comes to the internal data. So the first one is all the P&L, so to say, data, right? So all the sales, revenue, and cost structure data. And I think those are the most important when it comes to taking the pricing decision, because here you will find the discounting patterns that you're having, and frequently sealing the discounts is the fastest ROI that you can get, and you will learn this from internal data on your P&L. Secondly, using this data, if you, for example, are in the e-commerce ecosystem, using this data can show you how your, for example, supply chain is working, and if you should increase the price because you will run out of stock, or you should decrease the price because the stock is already full and you need to do something about it. I think this, like, financial data, this is one part of the data. The second part is like the marketing data, the GA4 data, etc. So to understand how many visits you are having on each product page, how many people are visiting your website in general. And this can be very helpful pricing wise as well, because it's a good indication if we should increase, decrease, or keep our prices flat. If you compare this data, like visits data, to your prices and to sales, I mean, this can be a very powerful analysis that can show you where to increase, where to decrease the price. And the third one is the usage data, I would say. And this is more to the product audience. It can be to e-commerce audience. It can be, how people are actually behaving on your website. So customer behavior data. It is much powerful in the product, because in the product, you can also see the usage data by your product, right? So if you are an e-commerce shop and you have an app, you can see how people are actually using your app. Where do they click? What's interesting for them? If you're only on website basis, I mean, you can see what people are interested in. And pricing wise, usage data can be powerful, because it can help you to take decision what bundles, for example, you can have, right? So how people are actually going down the way while browsing your app, for example, right? So how they are, like the orders, how do they look like, etc. But I would say that, these three things are in the matter of importance. So the first one, I think P&L data, super important, or financial data, very important. And then marketing data, also important. And then intersection of financial and marketing data. This is like amazing. And the third one that is like helpful, but I wouldn't start from it, is all the types of usage data. So how customers are actually behaving either on your website or within your product.
Great. So as far as I can understand, the sources of this data would be, for example, the ERP of a company, right?
Yes.
Might be the analytics of the company. What other source can it be that you can extract this data from?
It depends, how big you are, right? So if you're already starting, or if you're already advanced, right? Because if you're starting, most likely some simple SaaS solution can help you when gathering this data, right? Everyone has an access to Google Analytics, so most of the marketing data can be there. I wouldn't bet your revenue conversion data on Google Analytics. Like, the truth is always in your books, right? So the
Mm.
truth is always in accounting, hopefully. So I would rather use the data from it. And then, like, of course, financials, those are ERP systems, those can be your invoicing companies. And those are the people who should not controlling department. Those are the people who should have this data. When it comes to the product, there are a couple of SaaS, like, there are plenty of SaaS solutions that can help you to understand what are all the events within your product, right? So there is, for example, a solution that is called Amplitude. With the amplitude within the amplitude, for example, you can see how people are behaving either in the app, basically. Currently, what we are seeing, there are also many data aggregators, right? So instead of using many different data sources, you can use like one simple solution, and this simple solution aggregates all the data that you are having in one place. And there are like products like this. Before those products, I mean, there's always the avenue of having your own data warehouse and your own BI system. And this is typically, I would say that this is a good solution, but for the companies that are a bit bigger, to have single source of truth, which is on it's not on your premise, right? Most of them will be still in the cloud, and nevertheless it is like managed by you, right? So you have your own data warehouse, and you have your own visualization system like Tableau or similar.
Understood. And you would also, I don't know if you mentioned it, stock data, warehouse data, right? In order
Yes,
to
yes, yes,
make a
yes, yes.
decision.
And then I classify all this, like, I would say that this is like internal or like operations data. I call them
Good.
frequently financials, but then, like, when it comes to supply chain basically data, frequently they're stuck already in your ERP system. If not, I mean, there are also dedicated solutions. Also, like, we have plenty of clients who are outsourcing their supply chain to the third parties, fulfillment, etc. So then you only receive the reports, but still this is valid for you to understand what is the pace of sales, and where, especially if there is a threat of not having enough products in your
Of course, if you're overstock, understock,
exactly,
in the
right, if
warehouse.
you're under stock. But this is tricky, right? Because sometimes what we are seeing is that, like, what we are doing, right, for our clients, frequently we are coming up with an algorithm that is telling them what pricing decisions they should take. And one input to this algorithm is that it's your stock versus the pace of sales, right? Because if you see that some products are getting very popular, right? I don't know. And there was this movie, and your Casa del Papel, this famous series, like 3 years ago, and everyone was wearing, like, not everyone, but suddenly
It was a trend.
Dali masks were super popular. No, Spain won, or Argentina won the World Cup. At some point, all the Messi T-shirts were out of stock, right? I mean, you should also, like, pricing wise, should be capable of reacting to those trends in order to sustain the highest margin possible, right? Which means that if you look at your stock and you see that you are not that you have like X amount, and typically that would have been enough. Nevertheless, on the other hand side, you have the acceleration of sales, right? So the sales are growing, and the pace is getting higher and higher, which means that typically, if the pace wouldn't be so fast, I mean, no problem, your stock is enough. But in this particular situation, the pace is so fast that you can't really, like, you will be understocked pretty soon. What does it mean? It means that you should increase the prices in order to manage, like, the supply versus demand. Like, what you can do, maybe not what you should do, but what you can do is to increase the price, because most likely those things will be sold anyways, and you'll get your margin
So you need to reduce the sales pace,
by
maximize
increased
profit.
price. Yeah, exactly.
Since you're mentioning all this, it goes more to historical data, actually. And
Mhm.
historical data, I think, is one of the main points that somebody should be taking into consideration when
So
evaluating his internal data, and they
mhm.
understand what it's going to be. So, how do historical data or historical sales, wherever you need? And how do they influence actually the pricing strategies?
Yeah. So historical. So one thing we are like, I am a very big enthusiast of testing things in pricing, which basically we, we test something, we put it in the history, and then we learn from the history. Nevertheless, I think that, when it comes to the historical data, a couple of things. So the first thing is seasonality, and this is where like super obvious, but you can play with your price against seasonality, right? Having the same price for the sunscreen in winter is not as summer. It's not the best idea, right? Number one. Sorry to make it like this brutal. I mean, this is like a very obvious examples. There are like the things that are not that obvious. So looking at seasonality from the historical standpoint, sales data, very important. The second one, the promotion effectiveness, right? When you given any discount to your clients, I mean, it's nice to see if the discount was efficient. And here history is quite important, because super simply for now, not taking into consideration cannibalization effect, I mean, the first thing that you can do is to understand, okay, you had the promotion, what was the sales at the given the period that you can compare this promotion season with, and did you sustain the same margin or higher margin by introducing this promotion? Let me give you a very brief example. Right? If you're selling something for 1,000 euros and the cost of goods sold is 60%, then your margin is 40%. If you're selling 1,000 things for 1,000 euros at COGS at 60%, you have 400K of margin. Then if you decide to sell this one thing, the same situation, 1,000 euros, 60% COGS, but you decide to cut the price by 15%. So instead of 1,000, you will make it 850. In order to reach 400K margin, you need to sell 1,660 products, which means that you need to 15% of promotions within given situation need to sell, increase your conversion by 60% in order to have exactly similar margin. If you want to break it, you need to have break it meaning increase it. I mean, you need to convert even more than 60% of people. To our audience, you can do the math yourself, but I think it is bullet. I hope it is bulletproof. But more or less, like if your COGS is 60%, then 15% of promotion equals out to 60% of increase of conversion. And what does it mean? It means that historical data, and why I'm referring to this, I mean, this is how you can use the historical data, right? So if you decide to launch a promotion, we know that discounting is a big topic in e-commerce world. If you decide to launch the promotion tomorrow, I mean, see what was the sales at the period that is comparable. It can be year over year. It can be last month. You decide. Right? You know your business the best, but make sure that it is comparable and see what results of this promotion you expect financially, and if you are capable of actually, have a positive ROI from that. Right. So first one, seasonality. The second one, discounting strategy when it comes to the history. The third one, I would say that, the price decisions, I mean, history, but very short history. This is like your story in terms of maybe not short term, but your story in terms of, and now we are like intersecting two types of data, what they are buying and how to make sure that, I don't know, 80th percentile, 70th percentile, how to make them the 90th percentile, right? So how to make them top 10 buying clients, right? So how to make sure they mimic the same behaviors of as the clients who are the most profitable or like the most revenue generating for us. And why I marry this with basket opener, because frequently from history, you can also understand what products typically open the baskets, open the first sell for those clients that are the most loyal for you, right? And those products definitely should be priced at the very competitive way, right? So you want to actually introduce those, not introduce, but you want to incentivize people to buy these products, because maybe in time they will just follow the same behavior as the top 10 clients, right? In general, like your basket openers, so basket opener, a product that is opening the basket for yourself, the one that is, added to the cart as the first one, those products should be quite competitive. So from the P&L standpoint, those were the things that I would definitely consider. So high level, it's seasonality and discounts. A bit more tactical, I would say, it's LTV basket openers. Like typically, we're running around 20 to 30 analysis from P&L. So I will, I would be gladly. I would gladly stay with you next 6 hours to talk about it. But I think if you are looking for, top picks, then that would be it.
Chris, in all this process that you mentioned, and since we're talking about historical data, you mentioned about increasing conversion or reducing the price for the promotion. Where would you put elasticity in there? Because I think elasticity, at least not cross elasticity, product elasticity, is something that can have a great impact when you're deciding to make this kind of moves.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you want to anticipate and say, okay, I'm going to decrease my price by 15%, is the product elastic enough to sustain a 60% increase in sales?
Look, so why I didn't mention elasticity here, because like 95% of elasticity calculations that I have seen in my life were suboptimal or not statistically relevant, right? Because and elasticity, very powerful tool. I did it. I saw it. We did it for our clients. I mean, it was great, right? Nevertheless, it really depends on the size that you're currently in. Because what is elasticity, right? Elasticity is telling you how the price change will, in the simple terms, how the price change will drive the demand force, right? Seems logical. You increase the price by $1, instead of having 100 people buying it, you have 90 people buying it. You can do the calculation if it was worth it or not worth it. Like, conceptually, elasticity is super simple. But then the devil is in the details, right? Because of course, you can see how the elastic are your products based on your internal data. But is it really, does it really help? Because if you don't factor in what was the competitor price at a given time, what was the marketing spend of you and your competitor and the given price, it can be quite screwed, right? Because then you can take the elasticity of your elasticity of your product, and then it turns out that maybe now it's more expensive, but we put, I don't know, more in marketing budget, right? And if you don't factor in this situation, I mean, of course, it tells you some story, right? I want to make this clear, right? It tells you some story, but I wouldn't use this as a solution. Vice versa, right? You see how people are buying your thing, you increase the price in time, and it turns out that at the same time your competitor doubled the price, right? And you just increased it by 10%. So and then it turns out that people are buying more from you, and you are like, oh, great. The insight that I'm having is that I can then, the more I increase, the more conversion I have, right? So I would say that elasticity, in order to do it properly, as long as you are not, I don't know, 150 million euros e-commerce shop, or any B2C business, I mean, there is no use case for you to actually start it. Of course, if you want to do it only based on internal data, feel free. Like, the math is not that complex there. I mean, just take from ChatGPT or whatsoever the algorithm and just like put the data there. But honestly, I would rather start with with something that is more low key, which is, for example, on the intersection of marketing data. And let me go with one analysis that is not only financials, but also marketing. So a very great input that we are having is the revenue per visit, or like relative power of price per visit. Basically, this is how we call it internally. And this is like a super, super simple analysis where you look at all the visits at each of your product, and you see how many sales each visit get generated, right? And it gives you a very nice pricing input that if you have a lot of visits, but you have relative conversion low, so relatively there is not not many, like there is no volume there, most likely this product is too expensive, right? Price is stopping from people from buying this product. Yes, no, it's not niche, right? Because you have a lot of visits. It is popular, right? People are coming and looking at this product.
You're talking
But
very specific. Okay, okay, got
yeah,
your
so
point
it's
of
a
view.
lot of visits, right? Number of visits high, but number of sales low, right?
Mm.
And so if many people are visiting my product, so it is interesting, but I can't sell it. Most likely, price is the problem, right? On the so decrease it, see what happens, right? On the other hand side, if you have many not enough visits, right? So they're like relatively there is low visits there, but still sales is happening, and relatively you have high sales there, most likely you can increase the price there and invest in marketing a bit so more people see it, right? So this is like we call it revenue per visit analysis. It is in the intersection of like GA4 data and Google Analytics data and financials data. And I think that it takes like 1% of the time you need to calculate the elasticity, and it will be much more powerful, of course, as long as you are not super big shop working and fighting in a very competitive market. Yes, if you are do elasticity but factor in competition, history, etc., then you can really, really use it and see the power of it. But then if you are smaller, I mean, you can only use it as an indication. Definitely, I wouldn't recommend this if you don't do it properly to fuel your pricing algorithm through the elasticity.
I totally agree with you. I mean, elasticity. And the reason I mentioned it because it's a very popular term, and
Mhm.
people might think, okay, why not use that? It can be, and I totally agree with you, very misleading if used on its own.
Yeah,
Because it's just math. Math doesn't know what's happening in the market right now. Doesn't know how what your competitor is doing, what your stock is, what are the trends in the market, what's the economic situation in the market, actually. My
exactly.
perspective, regardless of business size, because it does make sense to look at it from a business size perspective, is that you can have an indication
Huh?
of the product. So is it relatively sensitive or not? I mean, if I change, for example, when I used to work in the consumer electronics section, we're always joking about the USB cables. Does anybody know actually if at €2, 2.30, 2.50, 2.8 euros, the price of a USB cable is cheap or not?
Yeah,
Usually
you
people
have
have
no
no
idea.
idea. So usually there are some products from which you can have an indication that if I charge it either €2 or €3, which is double the margin, actually inelastic because nobody's gonna care if a USB cable is the end customer. I mean, doesn't care if it's at €2 or 2.20. That's a bit
Exactly,
interesting.
exactly. So of course, and this is what we so we rather use it as a so now it's getting to be a more complex, but I hope interesting, right? Because we rather see what which products are price sensitive versus not price sensitive, right? And in price sensitive products, typically, I mean, your pricing power is lower. In insensitive products, your pricing power is higher, so there's more space for margin, right? And you have products in between, different shades of gray. And the first analysis, in order to understand, because look, price sensitivity is for your shop, not the truth in general. So if you are an electronics provider, I mean, most likely USB cable will be price insensitive. But if you are a shop who is selling USB cables, this will be your price sensitive good, right? So if you are, for example, maybe and USB cable, most likely there's not shop that is selling only USB cables, but let's call it like loudspeakers.
Mhm.
If you are a
Okay.
speakers, right, audio for your home, etc.
A
So
specialized
the
one.
yeah, specialized ones. For big electronics like MediaMarkt, for example, right? Big electronics company, like speakers most likely are not the most price sensitive goods, right? Most likely they're somewhere in the middle of the range, right? But if you are a specialized company who is selling speakers, those most popular speakers from MediaMarkt will be your price sensitive things, because customers who are coming there are educated customers and they did already your research because they already know your shop, right? So most likely
True,
they're,
true.
more educated than normal human who is looking for
Makes
for for,
perfect
for
sense.
yeah. My
Perfect.
point is that, the price sensitivity will be bound to the situation and to the shop that you are running. And why this is
There
important?
never is a golden rule for everybody. I mean, there's
Yeah,
not
of
one
course.
size fits all.
But then moving to the analysis itself, right? For us to understand, what are your most price sensitive sensitive goods, we're doing the analysis that is, and this is just a guidance, right? It's not truth. We're tweaking this, but to get the first sense, basically, what we're doing, we're trying to understand, what is your top 10 selling categories? What are the top 50 selling categories? And what are the least 50% selling categories, right? The top is A, the middle is B, the least is C, number one. Then we are looking what is the top selling subcategory in each of these categories, right? So again, top are A's, the second is B, and the long tail is C. And then we're looking what are the top products sold in each of these subcategories. And again, tops are one, A, then B, then C.
B and C, yeah.
So we have 3-layer structure. And each product has this grade to it. There is AAA, which is very like important product in important subcategory within important category.
Mhm.
Those are the things that will be very price sensitive. Be careful, people are aware. If you want to change something, just change it slowly and be careful with that. Instead of like decreasing the price by 20%, do it by 3% and see what happens, right? This is like, the gold in the crown, or like the pearl in the sun.
Aren't they also the promotional material?
In general, careful. First, learn the things that are,
Mhm.
longer in the, like, further in your journey. These ones are like, the ones that you test at the end. But you have then different products. For example, you have ABC, which is not important product in semi-important subcategory, but within important category on its own, right? So for example, it can be speaker, for example, not the speaker, but like the LCD TV, right? The old TV. So this TV nobody buys, but it is within LCD TVs. So the subcategory is semi-important. Nevertheless, the TV as a big category, not
It's an A category.
subcategory, it's a very important category, right? So within this product, I mean, you can be a bit more brave, right? But and this most likely is somewhere in the middle. But you also have the CCC, which is like not important product in not important subcategory within not important category, right? And then you can do whatever you want with pricing. I mean, not whatever you want, but you can be like, you can test very different things, right?
Mhm.
So I would say that from the internal data only, and of course, on top of it, it's very good to understand your competition, your marketing, etc. But if you want to play one analysis that will tell you at least the direction how brave you can be with your pricing test, I would really and and it's super simple, right? I mean, I would just put to each of your product this three dimension
Importance.
importance. If you don't have subcategories, do it 2 dimensions. So just a category and how important is a product within the given category. And it will be good enough for you to start working on your pricing, because then you just start working on it in CC category, for example, and do
And work your
something.
way up.
Yeah, for example, increase the price there, see what happens, right? And then you are treating pricing as a process. You're getting a pricing momentum, right? So you increase there. Okay, you learn something. Nothing has changed. So increase it again. Okay, there is additional sell. Great, right? So then you move to products that are like BC, for example, right? Or, ABC, for example. You name it, right? But I
I
mean,
think it's a great advice, Chris, for, if people want to experiment on that and be on the relatively safe side.
this analysis is a seat belt, basically, right? So, it is or a bumper, it should stop you from making the decisions that you'll regret. And it should show you where to start, basically.
It's understood. Now I want to combine it because we're talking a lot about the product. Let's go on the
Mhm,
other side and go to the customer, actually.
mhm.
And the customer usually has a purchasing behavior on average. So
Yeah.
how can this be used in order to optimize pricing?
So when it comes to the internal data that you have, like the second one definitely can be a cross upsell strategies, right? Because if you see that the product A is frequently bought with the product B, I mean, you should take the pricing decision based on it, right? So if the basket opener is product A, then product B frequently bought with product A. If it's like 10 times cheaper, maybe you should increase the price, because nobody will see in the whole basket that this price is more expensive, right? It's an HDMI like a very old example of HDMI cable. If you're buying a TV for like, I don't know, €2, I mean, if the HDMI cable is 20 or €50, nobody bothers, right? Nobody cares. Like not nobody, but not many people care, right? So I would say cross upsell strategies and how people are actually buying this is important. Then the third thing, and this will be a bit more psychological things, I would say that the user journey, and there are plenty of also solutions that are helping you to track the user behavior. So, how they are clicking, what they are referring to, how long they stay on the website, what is the
Mhm.
user journey. I mean, that can be also useful for you, for example, in the promotion display, right? So how you should, in case you're having a promotions, how you should display the promotion. And you can, for example, A/B test the absolute promotions versus the percentage of promotion. You can A/B test or test in general the colors, because while pricing is super important in price setting, of course, execution is also, or processes is also very important. So I think that you can use this data that are more psychological data in order to take the price execution decisions, right? So how to operations, maybe not execution, but how to operate, with sizes, with colors, with absolute versus percentage promotions, etc., etc.
I think it's clear. Since we're discussing about costs in our discussion, there's a cost analysis actually that has to be done. Can you talk me a bit about cost analysis and how does it determine prices and how it's done actually in a nutshell?
Yeah, so we frequently are referring to cost analysis to the margin analysis, right? So we frequently take into those are like exactly the same things, but those are
Mhm.
the things that like it just framing it a bit different, right? So we take into consideration like when it comes to your cost margin number one, which is the margin like revenue from the product minus the cost of the product,
Mhm.
basically. So cost of goods sold. Then we have margin number two, which is the revenue from the product plus revenue from shipping the product minus
Mhm.
cost of goods sold minus cost of the shipment. And then we have the margin number three, which is factoring in also the marketing costs, right? And we are thinking, how much you have spent on marketing this particular product. There is a way to understand your cost on the product page through Google Analytics, right? So this is like the third thing that we are typically doing. So what you should take into consideration from the product standpoint is definitely how much you're paying for the product, how much you're paying for shipping this product, and how much you're paying for selling actually this product, right? So marketing costs to the product. So pricing wise, I think this is quite important for you to understand what and to always work on the third lever, on the third margin layer, right? Because frequently I see clients that are in the loophole of increasing the prices and then being super happy that marketing that margin number one or margin number two has increased for them, but apparently after a couple of months they realize that they have less money in their bank account because the margin number three has increased. Because frequently if you're increasing the prices, Google is not that generous for you, which increases your marketing spend, which unfortunately deteriorates your margin free. So this is the third thing. This is like where I would just where I would definitely put more effort, right? So it's not only about increasing margin one, margin two. It's also about increasing, maybe not it also, it's primarily about increasing your third margin.
Sorry.
No,
Point of
no,
view,
no,
you
go
mentioned
on.
shouldn't this also be to the product costs,
Depends,
indirect costs?
so I think there is no right or wrong, and the ones that you apply is better. It is like the one that you feel the most comfortable with is definitely the one that you should implement. Nevertheless, and I think there is no right or wrong. This is
Mhm.
about how you are reporting, and most likely there is right or wrong in the invoicing, in the invoicing or accounting ecosystem. But from my experience, what we are doing, like on the from the product standpoint, we are not factoring OpEx costs, right? What we are doing, we know how much we need to sell and what margin number three we need to have. And then, in order to be EBIT or net profit basically at the end. Nevertheless, I've seen companies that are having like 8 layers of margin, right? So then afterwards you can factor in all the costs when it comes to the back office, right? Then you
Mhm.
can factor in the management costs, right? So board of management like costs, right? So I mean, you can have more and more layers of margin that are factoring OpEx cost. How we typically work pricing wise, we work pricing wise on margin number three, because also frequently I don't want to really play this card, because pricing should work in a way that it should sustain your organization. But sometimes the responsibility of pricing ends somewhere, right? And I think it ends at the moment of once you already have the product and what are your marketing and shipping costs, right? I mean, if you grow your back office as a manager of the company, CEO, founder, you name it, to the size that you can't really sustain it. It might be not necessarily a pricing problem, but the cost problem that you are having, right?
True.
So I would say that as an advice, right, or maybe not an advice, but how I'm working, what I have seen is that we typically work towards margin free, which is factoring marketing costs and shipment costs, and then we want to make companies profitable in general. So we want to create as much profit to make it like, EBIT positive or increase EBIT in general. Feel free to have additional layers of margin, but I'm not sure if pricing can be responsible for all of them, right? Because you might get wrong conclusions, right? That your pricing is wrong, while it might be costs that there are not.
Sort of, you keep the third margin with a silent, let's say, minimum margin percentage to sustain the whole company.
Yeah.
That I want my margin three to be at least X percent.
Yeah.
Well,
And actually,
silently in there is everything else.
yeah, and to be also very fair with you, I mean, we frequently work with absolute margin at the end, right? Because margin number three will be, of course, there is some minimum, but it will be minimum when it comes to the products that are the most price sensitive, right? Because if you have like the key value item type of a product, which is, I don't know, in grocery, milk, butter, or feta cheese in Greece, for example, you need to follow the competitors, right? Because you need to have the product that are the most affordable on the market, the best deal on the market. So the margin there will be almost not existing, right? But when it comes to soy sauce, for example, this is a book that we are writing in the company. What's the price of the soy sauce? The short intro to pricing in e-commerce. Do you know what is the price of 1 liter of soy sauce? You have no idea, right? Again, right? So those are the products where the margin number three should, in principle, skyrocket.
Understand. Since we talked about data from one source, data from another source, lots of data, lots of things to do. How can companies eventually ensure that the data are accurate and reliable in order to use them? Because it's a challenge as well.
Yeah, this is a very, very big challenge, right? So there are a couple of things, right? So first, like everyone in the company should know the basic definitions. So I was working with one of the furniture provider, and half of the company in margin number one when it comes to cost of goods sold was factoring all the costs when it comes to the costs. And since they were like they were e-commerce shop, but some of the products they were designed by themselves and produced them by themselves. I mean, they also had a guy who was like doing some things in their like in their production, and half of the company was not factoring into the price salary of this guy, and it was not one guy, right? It's a team who was doing that. And we were looking at this and we were like, how come we were like our own private label actually is less profitable than the things that we are just reselling? I mean, this is the first time that we are seeing that in this industry. What's going on? So we dig, and it turns out that they are not calculating the costs properly, hence the margin is screwed. Number one, right? So definitions super important. Everyone should know at the company what definitions are having. Then you are having then the calculations, right? So you said about factoring in OpEx cost into the margin. Fine, you can do it. Just make sure that everyone in the company are using the same definition towards the same algorithm, right? I mean, as long as you are on the same page within the whole company, you will be good, right? Because you have a North Star and you can work against it. Number two. Number three, I mean, you need to check it from time to time. So quality controls, controlling, and those are the people who should be who should be there. And once you're a bigger company, like doing the external audit just for the sake of doing the external audit is good reason enough to save you some problems in the future. Right? So, I mean, you can have just a third party who will check it from you every year. I know. Don't get bored with those things, right? But only if you're a big company, of course, right? Because if you're small, I'm most likely this is not the best use of your money. But if you can already afford it, having it can be a freelancer, it can be a company who is doing that. Let's like just for the sake of sanity, have a third party looking on your data just to pinpoint something if it's working or not working. And the very last thing is a common sense, actually, filter that I would take into consideration because like if from my experience, and it is anecdotal, sorry for that, but from my experience, if something doesn't make sense, rarely it's true, right? So of course there are, but if something doesn't make sense on the common sense level, I mean just check it twice, right? So for us it was like this experience of private label providing less profit margin in the percentage terms than custom label. Like, how come, right? We are responsible for producing it. We don't, there is no margin of producer because we are the producer. So in principle, the margin should be higher, right? And of course, it can happen. For example, if you have two companies and one of your companies producing the furniture for your e-commerce, right? So you are keeping the books separate, so then it makes sense, right? But it was not the case in this case, and we're like, we have never seen it in this industry, and we're like, and you can take it, and you're saying, yeah, this is just it's his or her beauty, right? It's the beauty of this company. Let's take it as is, but you can like challenge that, right? And I would say that if something doesn't make sense on the common sense level, I mean, check it twice.
Habit sometimes can be a very bad advisor. I'm seeing the numbers like that. I'm used to these numbers. They should be okay because these were always the number. So yeah, just go back and make sure that it's correctly measured.
Yeah. It's that's that's the last filter, right? Because you have all these filters, you have like this controlling. You really have a lot of things like filters that you can use. But this last one, I think it might be powerful for you.
The most important because, as we say, garbage in, garbage out. So I mean,
Yeah,
no, making decisions on wrong basis can be devastating.
100%.
So I think we have covered most of the internal data that somebody can use, utilize, find in his company, create, analyze, evaluate, make decisions on, say, check, of course, and validate. In your opinion, are all these internal data enough for somebody to make an educated, most correctly pricing decision for his
I,
products or
I
services?
think that it's not that easy to answer because of course, like the easy answer is no. You need to have like all this data. You need to have a competition data. It would be nice to have a primary research data, etc., etc. So by the book, of course, I mean, you can play this card, but I would say that, using the limited number of data to take the pricing decision is much, 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 much better than not taking pricing decisions at all or taking pricing decisions by gut feeling, right? So I would say that, of course, by the book, it would be nice to also understand your competitive set. It would be also nice to understand the customer behavior, have some interviews with them, look what they value, etc. But this is like the academic situation, and
Approach.
yes, and I would say that it's much more risky for you if you just guess the pricing decision or just don't take the pricing decision rather than taking it by the internal data, and most likely you will be ahead of 90% of the company anyway. It's in your market anyway, because just pricing is still underestimated lever, and people are just guessing it or just taking it based on the competition, right? So my point here is that I'm using it, right? So for me, in order to have 2 3 first, second, or third pricing tests, typically within our engagement we're doing 6 to 7 pricing tests. The first 3, first 4 even are make solely based on your experience, because you know your company well, you know your market well, and internal data. So I think it's definitely enough.
It's a good start.
Yes,
But
definitely. It's a good start, and it's even a good middle of the journey, right?
so, of course, as we're not alone in the market, things happening around us. Other companies sell products like ours, competitive products. The market changes, trends changes. So, because this is a whole new topic, which we need to look into that, I think we can schedule a new uh, talk together and dig a bit more into the external data, competition data, the marketing data, and see how this can also add into our very nice base of internal data, give us more educated and, let's say, thoughtful decisions.
And it's gonna be the next episode, right? So we'll talk
Exactly.
about the competition. Also powerful source, also quite interesting. So can't wait. And for the internal data, I think that we provided more than enough content to start.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much for being with us today. It was a
Thank you
pleasure
very
talking
much
to
for
you
having
again.
me.